Hey guys, so it's Mike at 309 Machine. I've been thinking about doing this video for a bit, but basically what I want to do is kind of talk through the whole process of CNC porting a saw and how it may be different than traditional hand porting and using a lathe. So I've got a 500 here. We're going to tear it down. I'll talk through it. I'll show you how we put it in the machine, how we do some measurements, and then how we run it and, you know, finish it up and put it back together. So like I said, this is a brand new saw, never even, you know, had the tape cut. So open this thing up. You know, you're going to see me store stuff back in this box. Obviously, you know, not everybody gets the box, and that's okay. You know, if you're going to tear your saw down, just find a good bin or some type of cardboard box from Amazon or something that you can put all your stuff in so things don't roll all over the floor. But this just helps me kind of know what parts go with what saw and everything gets put back together right. So all right, so we've got our saw here. You know, pretty simple. I've done this before of how to take this saw apart. So we're just gonna bust through this. You can do it without taking the handlebars off. I find it easier if you just take the saw apart, especially on a 500. So real quick, couple things you're gonna need. You're gonna need a scrunch. You know, both taking the side cover off and then you know, popping the fasteners on these 500s. This thing is designed to basically perfectly fit that. If you use a screwdriver, a lot of times you can strip it out. So need a scrunch. You need a T27 Torx bit. I put one on a drill that just makes it easier to faster to take it apart. When you torque the cylinder down and stuff like that, you need to use this. Sorry, the dryer's going off. You need a pair of needle nose. On a 500, you need a T10 as well to take apart the grounding screw on the fuel injection. And then, you know, sometimes a little flat blade screwdriver helps you pop some of the fittings and hoses apart. So real quick, we'll just get started. I use a magnetic tray a lot of times to put bins in. Coincidentally enough, these screws are aluminum, so they won't work, but just keep stuff separated. A really good trick I like for kind of the home gamer, get a piece of cardboard and just punch holes in it and, you know, write, you know, this is for the intake shroud. Punch 2 holes, stick these in there. You'll know exactly where they go. You know, I've done hundreds of these things, so I know where all the screws go. But take your parts, put it back in the box. So this is just the butterfly throttle body. These connections, just real easy. They push, they pull out. Make sure you never get these things crossed back when you put them. They're color coded. But if you put the black in, they'll fit. If you put the black in the blue and the blue in the black, you'll fry your computer. Luckily, I know that on somebody else's dime, but you'll fry the computer, so don't do that. So what I like to do is kind of take this, let's get this handlebar off. Okay, so we take this top screw out, and then there's 4 more, 2 in the side here. You do not have to take this one out here. This is just a limiting bushing, basically. It just allows the saw, without a suspension kit, it'll have a tendency to rub inside that little pocket. So you don't have to take that off. And frankly, it's kind of a pain in the butt if you do. Okay, so then I lay the saw down. If you just kind of pry it here, this is where the scrunch comes in. Pops right off. Okay, put this in your box, flip your saw back over. Okay, let's finish the intake side here. So if you take this boot, you can pull it with your finger. Either way, just kind of pry it and pop it out of that connection. And then there's this one spring mount over on this side. Take this screw out, and then I just pry the case back, and then I put the screw back. Okay. Now basically the only thing holding the gas tank on is the hoses. So if you reach down in here, you can pull this impulse line loose, and then both the supply and the return line for the injection system go. So those are the three fittings that I just undid. So now you take your gas tank and set it aside. So now that we've got it down to kind of just the power unit, we can take this muffler off. So these four, I don't know if it's really noteworthy, but the bottom left screw on a 500 on the muffler has this washer. I don't understand why. I don't know that anybody does, but it does. So that's where I put it back. Okay, so take the muffler cover off. And we pull these head bolts. Okay, so then you know that they're actually the same size as these other ones, but they're dirty. They've had, it's been run at the factory, so you know that those are the two that go in here. So got your can, your gasket, and your heat shield. Okay, we'll set those aside. I'll show you what we do with those in a bit. Okay, so the exhaust side's done. So on the intake side, take this little screw out of the top here. Then I turn the saw up so I'm looking right down at it. Just take this harness and unclip it from where it goes. Okay, and then this other injection harness, they're just clips. They kind of fit down over top of there. So I pull that first one off. I take my my T10 here, and then you take this screw out, and this is basically just a grounding wire. So whenever that the ECM basically sends a ground signal, that's when this thing fires. So finish pulling this off the rest of the way. Now there's 4 screws that hold this injection module on, but we can only see 3 of them right now. So let's take these 3 out. Okay, set those with that little black one I took off here. And then to pull this off, I've seen lots of guys do this lots of different ways, but this is by far the easiest way that I found. If you kind of take your hands and just pry, this thing will just pop off of this boot. You don't have to take that boot off. And then you can kind of just fold this boot up quick and pull this right over top, okay? So this boot's still on there. I don't like to take that off. And then we can get to our 4 screw. So we take that off. This injector module comes off. I like to put that gasket back where it belongs the right way. Set that in my box. Take my scrunch and just pop this little quarter turn fastener thing off. And then we're going to need one more thing I forgot. You'll need a 5/8 socket. A spark plug socket works real good to take this spark plug out. So the 19 millimeter that's on here won't work. So break that loose. Take our spark plug out. Okay, I've kind of got a mess going here, so let's straighten up just a half a second. 13 millimeter. Again, I've got it on impact because I do this all the time, but you obviously could just have this on a ratchet. But take your decomp off, set that aside. Okay, the only thing on there now is the actual cylinder. So let's pull these off. You got 4 screws down here. Okay, once you've done that, this will come right off. So I kind of just a little, you know, twist helps it come off sometimes. Okay, keep track of those 4 screws. Sometimes they'll fall down where the flywheel is, and okay, so we've got our head bolts, and then this base gasket it's kind of crimped on there whenever they torque it down. So I find it easy and smart if you kind of go all 4 corners and just barely with your fingernail kind of pop it off. It'll come off perfect. You won't tear it, you won't bend it. So we're going to set that aside. On a used saw, I wouldn't typically reuse that, but on a brand new saw, it's still in great shape, so we're going to use it again. Okay, so we've got our stock cylinder here, and again, this is a brand new saw, so there's really nothing to see. It is kind of noteworthy, you know, the inside of here is kind of dirty. Again, this saw's been run at the factory real quick, but you know, there's lots of guys that are doing videos on the internet about oils and which are good and which are bad, and there's good oils, there's bad oils. I'm not a fan of the Steel Ultra, and coincidentally enough, I don't think Steel's a fan of the Steel Ultra. So the German saws, all the professional models, the German saws, they don't even use their own oil, at least the Steel Ultra, whenever they run it at the factory. So if you look inside this saw, it obviously has, you know, some film on it. Steel Ultra is blue. The oil that is inside of this saw is red. So take that for what it's worth. Okay, so we're going to set this aside. If you were going to leave this out for any amount of time, I definitely recommend, you know, putting a shop rag or something over top of this. But this thing won't be open for more than 20 minutes, so we're gonna leave it as it is. So let me get set up to show you how we put this on our fixture to put in the machine, and we'll be right. Okay, we got picked up a little bit. We're gonna put this in the fixture. So every one of these cylinders has a different fixture, so you can see, you know, I like to engrave on here what's what. But basically the way that these work is I slip them in here, I snug these up. These are fixture pins that I used to use in a machine shop before this. Okay, so we got that secure. So that holds the cylinder real nice and tight. And we're able to basically access everything in one shot. And then we've got a fixture for the muffler too. So we're going to do port matching on the gasket and the heat shield at the same time. So I take all these, stack them up, push these through just to help us kind of get lined up. And then the screws I'm using here are the ones that, you know, held it on the saw. So we snug those up. Just for sake, I take this screen out. I do put this back in every saw. So, you know, if you don't need it, feel free to take it out. But a lot of these saws, including this one, they go to the West Coast and they're working on fires, and we don't want to be causing one. So anyways, here's our two pieces for the 500 that need to run through the machine. So let's get it fired up. I had it shut off because it's kind of loud and it's right behind me. So I'll get that fired back up, and we'll get you over to the machine and show you how this stuff goes in here and how that process works. Okay, so real quick, you know, everybody's maybe wondering what we're doing this on. So, you know, my machine just happens to be a Haas. It's a 500 UMC 500 SS. I've had real good luck with the Haas stuff. It's I'm sure there's some imported components in here, but I know for a fact this machine was assembled and machined and all that stuff, the castings in California. So it's an American brand, so I can really get behind that. So ours is a UMC is a dedicated 5-axis machine, so this thing is able to rotate, you know, like 110 degrees this way and 30 degrees this way. The platter can spin 360 degrees. And then the head here moves in X and Y, and then up and down in Z. So that's your 5-axis, X, Y, Z. This is B, and this is C. So ours happens to have a robot pallet loader on the side. So this allows me to have basically 15 pallets on here. You can see some of these, you know, have parts for our handlebars, but I can load that thing up and go home and, you know, come back in the morning and these parts are done. Or it can run, I can set it up in the morning and it can run during the daytime while I'm working or porting or whatever. So I'm gonna get this thing loaded up here and we'll show you what we do next. Okay, so we've got our part. You know, as I showed you, this fixture is keyed. This is a dovetail fixture. So the way that this works is it slips down in there, lined up. Sorry if I'm aiming bad. And then we're going to snug that screw up, and that holds it, and that locates within thousands, and probably actually tenths of a thousandths every time. So really good way to kind of set your zero once and then leave it alone. But I'll show you that doesn't necessarily matter for our accuracy, because we're going to measure this part individually and make it perfect. So let me get this thing snugged up and we'll get back to you. Alright, so we got our part locked in here. Now what we're going to do, and this is where I think maybe 309 is different than everybody else, from at least, you know, what I've seen or been sent. But every one of these parts, because these things are cast and you're putting them in a fixture, they're all different. Casting's not perfect. There's tolerances built into everything. But I care exactly where that bore is at and how perpendicular and everything, the base is cut. So every single cylinder that we machine basically gets individually measured on this machine, kind of using a built-in measuring device, and then we put that back in our CAD software, and we can basically correct it and make every one of these things kind of perfect. So let's run this cycle and we'll show you. So what the machine's going to do is it's going to switch in a tool that has the ability to measure things. So you can touch off parts. So it puts the probe in, and then it's going to run this cycle that's going to measure every one of these things. So I had to custom write a bunch of software in order to be able to do this, and but basically what it does is it's going to touch it's going to touch 8 points on this cylinder, and it's going to save those points, and then we're going to be able to import that data back into the computer and compare it to, you know, kind of what we had drawn up. And it's going to say, well, this is off a little bit, and it's going to adjust basically what's flat in the machine for every single cylinder. That way every one of these things is perfect. The other big benefit of the way that we're doing it is there's only one setup here. So, you know, if a guy's running this thing on the lathe, he's got to put it on one mandrel, or chuck it up and cut his squish band, and then he's got to take it back off and put it on a different mandrel and, you know, re-zero it, and then, you know, cut his base. And we're not doing any of that. It's one setup. That thing gets the squish cut and the base cut, you know, not simultaneously, but in the exact same setup. So it doesn't leave that fixture or move or be touched between those two operations. So That's how we're able to make a cylinder and send it off without having the saw, because the way that that piston and the crank and everything is in the base of the saw, you know, there's a tolerance, a very tight tolerance from steel on how that is. So as long as we make our parts the same, you know, to a very tight tolerance, they're all going to work out the same. So, you know, I've done hundreds and hundreds of these cylinders, especially like on a 500, and man, I've checked a lot of them, and I've never had the squish vary by more than 1,000. And honestly, that's probably just measuring the solder a little bit different. So anyways, like I said, we've got those points. We're going to save that and transfer it over our computer, and I'll meet you back at the computer and we'll show you what we do with that. Okay, so we're back over here at the computer, and I've imported the file that basically has those measurements. So you can see these are the 8 points we measured. Now, don't be worried that these are red. I've got the tolerances set really, really tight on, basically, this is just a visual indicator. So this means that this is like 5 thousandths tilted versus 3 thousandths would be green. So it's not like it's way off. It's all a matter of relativity. So, you know, you can see basically that fixture holds it pretty good, where 6 of the 8 points were right. And basically the red means that it's less than what the tolerance is. So really what this means is this cylinder in the machine is tilted just a little bit this way, right? So if you were to cut it, this would get cut, say if you were trying to take, you know, 40 thousandths off the base or whatever. This would maybe only get 37 thousandths on this end, and this would, you know, maybe get 40 or 41. It's just tilted. So what the software is going to do, and how I've written this, is it can basically auto correct, and you'll see in a second here, it can compensate for those things being tilted. And now if we look at this, it's basically perfect. So this thing is gonna, in the software, tilt this back so that the part, whenever we export the post, or, you know, send the program, every one of these things is perfect. So like I said, these bars are really, you know, the tolerances are set really tight. So now basically this thing's correcting so that, you know, it's within tenths of 1,000. So, you know, that's 3 zeros. The guys that are doing this on a lathe, they couldn't even, I'm not, I don't want to badmouth those guys, but it's hard to even measure that small, is I guess really what I'm getting at. And you're not going to get it with a pair of, you know, calipers from Harbor Freight. So this is the way that we ensure that every one of these things is just as accurate as basically you can possibly be while machining cast parts. So now we're going to be able to run our, post our program specifically for this cylinder. We'll send it over to the machine, and then I'll meet you back there and we'll cut this bad boy. Okay, so we're back here at the machine. I got the program all loaded up. We're going to go ahead and run this, and you can see, you know, it's in the exact same setup that we left it after we measured it. So we're going to go ahead and run this program, and the machine's going to take off and start changing its tools. And you'll see, you know, same setup that we measured it in is how we're going to cut it. So this machine uses all, I mean, you could run high-speed steel, but I run all carbide tooling. So, you know, I could cut fast if I needed to, but basically what it allows me to do is get a good surface finish, and the tools last a lot longer. So I'm only cutting, you know, aluminum on this thing, so it's hardly any different than cutting plastic. But as you can see, this thing's just going to go about its own and do this. I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to see, but I got to flush that coolant on there to keep the chips cleared away so that I'm not double cutting stuff. It keeps the tool cool and the part cool. So if I turn that off, you'd be able to see a lot better, but the surface finish on this part would be worse. And you know, one of these cylinders is $430 from Steel. So much as I love you guys, I'm not going to sacrifice one just for the sake of showing. So I'll probably speed up the rest of this so you can, you know, kind of watch the whole process, but you know, moving at the machine speed, it does it quick, but it's still probably more than a guy wants to sit and watch the whole thing. So now typically, you know, one of the big benefits of of doing it like this is, you know, I can walk away and go work on something else while this is running. I don't have to tend to the machine. I'm able to go tear another saw down or whatever. So like I said, we just cut our base there. We're gonna engrave our logo in the top of the cylinder. This is just something we do on most of our models, you know, just to put our brand on there and let a guy know that, you know, if he sees that, he can expect this saw to run really well. So see if I can maybe capture it after it finishes. Yeah, so you can see our logos in the top of the cylinder. Now we're going to cut our squish. So we cut our base. We're going to cut our squish band. So, you know, this is cutting down inside the combustion chamber. We're making the combustion chamber smaller. The combination of the two of those is setting the squish tighter than it was from the factory. So these are all things that they really bump the power up. So, you know, there's guys that are porting saws, and I say that with, you know, quotes. You know, they're just going in and cleaning up exhaust ports, and call it what you will, but you're not going to see the power increase versus a guy who, you know, is doing the actual machine work. So you can't just have a, you know, a Dremel or a Fordham or something and you know, really call yourself a porter. You need to do this machine work, because this is really where you're picking up the power at. So again, this is you know, as I was alluding to when we were measuring the part, these being done in the same setup. You know, this machine has encoders on it, and it knows exactly where it is. So as long as we you know, haven't taken thing out or moved anything, the relativity between the base and the bottom of the bore, that the squish is going to be the exact same every single time. So I'm not saying, well, I put this on, and then because I cut the squish this way, I need to measure it and cut the base this way. Basically, I know the measurement from the bottom of the cylinder, the base, to the top of the bore. I know what I want that to be every time, and that's what the machine is cutting. It's not cutting well, you know, I cut the squish, I put it back on the saw, I measured it at 60, I want it to be 20, so I'm going to cut 40 off. I know that this needs to be 3.729 inches. You know, I pulled that number out of the sky, but, you know, that's what I want it to be every time, and that's what this thing cuts it every time. So you'll see whenever we end up pulling the cylinder out that, you know, a lot of times that band won't be perfectly call it even all the way around. It might be a touch wider on one side than the other. And again, that all comes back to, these are cast cylinders. You know, they're poured in a mold and they're all different. You know, you can't hold 10 thousandths of an inch tolerances when you're doing casting. That's just not how it works. So that's why they cast everything, and then they machine what's important. So here we're doing the exhaust port. We're going to go in and basically, the way we do it on a 500 is we make a bunch of passes around and around, you know, while this thing's going, and it's going to clean that up. I'll show you when it's done. It doesn't take a whole lot of love afterwards to get it, you know, basically perfect. That thing comes out of here really nice. We do end up doing a little hand polishing and finishing, just so that it, you know, it's a mirror finish when we're done, but it comes out of the machine looking pretty good. So one noteworthy thing here, so this machine can do simultaneous 5-axis movement. So basically it can move, and it is moving all 5-axis at the same time. So you'll see that the head's going back and forth and side to side and up and down, and this is tilting and rotating all at the same time. So that allows us to cut shapes that are basically, you know, would otherwise be impossible. There's a lot of machines that'll, you know, run what they call 3+2. So it has the ability to move all 5-axis, but it can only move these 3 on the head, X, Y, and Z simultaneously, and then it can do B and C just for positioning. So it would pull the head up, it would move this to where it needed to go, the head would come back down, it would machine. It can't, they wouldn't be able to do all 5 simultaneous. So that's one of the big selling points of a Haas machine, that, you know, otherwise you'd have to really step up into some super high-end, you know, German or Japanese or something in order to get that. So funny enough, actually, this machine has capabilities that are, I don't want to say so great, but they're they're significant enough that whenever they install these machines, they actually have to geolocate every one of these machines, because it basically has the ability to produce arms, you know, like you could build stuff on here that would be needed to create weapons. And so this machine actually has a tilt sensor on it, and if I was to try to pick it up and move it, say to another shop, or even if it was in my shop 4 feet away, it basically bricks this thing until I can have somebody come back out from the service department and geolocate it again. So you know, that's the capabilities, I guess, that we're working with here on chainsaw parts. So it's a pretty neat thing. This thing's just going to go round and round, and you know, there's lots of things where guys are going to say, well, you know, he could run that faster or whatever. True, I could, but you know, whether it takes 15 minutes or 8 minutes, it doesn't make that big of a difference. And I'm more worried about surface finish, tool life, stuff like that. So, you know, I could spin this cutter a lot faster, I could move it a lot faster, but especially on this cylinder, it's gonna resonate really bad. It's, you know, this thing's basically just a big you know, bell, and if you don't have it dialed in, it's gonna screech and chatter. And so you know, I've just found what works well, and that's where we run them at. I don't, I'm not worried about pinching seconds out of every cycle time. You know, some of the parts that we run for our handlebars, I'm going to let this run and I'm going to step over here, but you know, something like this, this is a lower mount for one of our 261 3/4 wrap handles. You know, I can show you. I tab these and they actually just kind of break off. Anyways, that's going to be a discount piece now, I guess. I'm joking. But, you know, when we run these, I care about cycle time a bit more because, you know, we run a lot of them. Again, since I leave the machine to run at nighttime, not the end of the world. 15 part, you know, if there's 15 pallets, and I'm gone for, you know, call it 12 hours, you know, if the cycle time's less than 50 minutes, it doesn't really matter anyways. So, you know, this part takes, call it 20 minutes to run. So, you know, this thing's only running for, let's see, what would that be, 6 or 7 hours or whatever, and then it's going to sit idle because there's only so many pallets. So, you know, you can worry about cycle times and all that stuff as much as you want, but it doesn't always become the most important thing. So this is going to end up being a longer video, but you know, I think it's important to show people, you know, what we're doing. There's, you know, hundreds or thousands of videos on guys porting saws, you know, kind of the conventional way, but there basically aren't any videos showing how, you know, it's done on a CNC. So, you know, as much as I want to kind of hold these things close to my chest, because, you know, it's allowing me to do it a different way than everybody else is. I think it's important that, you know, I share this stuff and, you know, let the consumer or even just the regular guy who's interested in porting saws or chainsaws, you know, see this and know that this is how it works, and you know, he can make his decision on whether he wants a guy to do it by hand or if, you know, he wants us to do it on a machine or whatever. I think you're going to get a good product out of either way. You know, I know there's lots of guys that do this by hand that build a hell of a saw, and you know, that's great. It's just, you know, we're able to do things, shapes and the repeatability. You know, there's not even an argument that the repeatability of this is far superior than, you know, a guy doing it by hand. So it's one of the big benefits. Again, I can do, you know, I could easily run the amount of cylinders in this machine that, you know, a guy that's doing it by hand is doing in a week, probably even in an afternoon. So that's what allows us to keep our lead time so low. You know, typically we're advertising a week, and we've, you know, been holding that for the last year. And if it's longer than that, it's uncommon, and it's typically because a saw is back ordered through the manufacturer or whatever. But you know, we're in the business of building saws, not storing saws. So you know, I'll have another one of these sitting next to it before I get to the point where it's 8 to 12 weeks to ship a saw. So if I take your money, I'm gonna send you something quick, or you know, something does come up, we're gonna have a conversation about you know, how I can make it right. And so this thing just keeps going. We're taking real small steps. You know, we're talking sheets of paper, you know, that we're measuring stuff in, or you know, the amount of passes that we're taking here. It's not you know, fractions of an inch or whatever. We're thousandths of an inch. So I want this to be, again, as smooth as it can be when it comes out of the machine. That way, you know, frankly, we have to do less hand finishing, but it's just that good and repeatable every time. So everything that I touch, you know, by hand, just opens up that much more opportunity for something to be a little bit different from one saw to the next. So, you know, I'm very confident that, you know, if a guy buys a saw today and he bought a saw a year ago or whatever, even longer, they're going to be the exact same. They're going to run the exact same. You could interchange the parts. It doesn't matter. So, you know, we're not focused on building, you know, race saws here. You know, most of the stuff we build goes to guys that are, you know, making this, using this tool for a living. So I want a good strong running work saw. Something like our 500 is running, you know, mid-9s power. We've had them dynoed. You know, at the time when Dyno Joe dynoed our saw, it was the, you know, the best running 500 he'd put across his dyno. So, you know, everybody's got their preferences on how they like the feel of the saw, more torque, you know, higher running, whatever. You know, this is the way we build our saw, and I'm sure there's guys that build them different, but you know, you should be able to match your chain to how the saw runs, and, you know, kind of get something that you like. You know, one of the biggest things that we see guys do that I kind of cringe when I see is, you know, guys have a tendency to like to tug on a saw or yank on the handle, not specifically when they get it stuck, but I'm talking when they're cutting. You know, that's not how the saw is designed to run. You're supposed to be able to put the saw in the wood, have your raker set enough where that thing feeds itself, and let the saw do the work. You shouldn't be prying on it. It doesn't need you to do that. And all you're going to do is wear out other components. You know, something like your clutch. If you pull a little bit too hard, and, you know, that thing's spinning 10,000 RPM, and you tug on it a little bit too much and it locks that clutch up, all you're doing is burning that clutch up. So we like to see, you know, most of the timber followers who are, you know, out on the West Coast or whatever, you know, watch one of those guys who runs the saw all day long. You know, they put the saw in the tree, they let the saw feed itself, they let the saw run, you know, and your chain's going to tell you whether it's cutting good or not. It's not whether the saw is necessarily running good or has got a bunch of torque or whatever. So, you know, we could do this a lot faster again if we wanted to. You know, in the past we've actually stuck one bit down in there and kind of just profiled the whole thing, but you're really limited on port shapes and stuff like that whenever you're basically drawing a line between the rectangle on the outside and the rectangle on the inside. You know, if you want to use one bit that's the full length. So this is why we like to basically make a bunch of passes, and it allows us to cut shapes that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. So that's why we're doing it like that. There are some saws that, you know, we found that the port shape, we like to be like that, where there's basically no, it's straight walled all the way through. And so, you know, those ones we cut like that with a straight bit, just because it's a real uniform cut. But on a 500, we found that they run just a touch better with a port shape that doesn't allow us to do that. So this thing's going to finish up, and So it's basically cut everything that it's going to cut right now, but it's cleaning up basically the entry into the cylinder. One of the big benefits of using this, you know, kind of high-end carbide tooling is that we can cut through that plating inside the cylinder really nice. We don't have to worry about chipping. So, you know, that's one of the big benefits of, you know, using the tooling that we're doing is I don't have to worry about flaking that stuff off. Okay. So that finishes. We're gonna deburr the edge of that port just real fast. Just take the edge off. You can see there's a little you know, shiny spot there. Now we're gonna cut our chamfer on the base, so where the base meets the bore. You know, where you go to slide your piston back up in there, we're able to put a nice even chamfer all the way around there. The transfer ports, the lowers at least. Okay, so that cylinder's what's going to get machined in here. You'll probably note that we didn't touch the intake on a 500. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't do anything to the intake. The runner is so short, and things like timing are controlled more by the computer than they are vacuum. So we leave that alone. And then you'll notice the uppers, I still got to reach in there and do those by hand. So we'll show you how we do that. And let's get this thing out and blown off, and we'll show you what we do with the rest of it. Okay, so we got this taken off. You know, I can show you, like I was saying, you know, that the finish inside those cylinders out of the machine is really nice. You'll see there's little striations, but you couldn't feel those, you know, with your finger if you wanted to. They're just visual. They're just kind of scuffs. So we'll get it cleaned up, but you know, if we just you know, rechamfered the ports in there and sent it on its way, it would be plenty fine. So you can see, you know, this thing's basically ready to go. Now we're still going to have to get down in there and do our uppers, but you'll see how we do that. So okay, so we're over here at the grinding bench, and again, since, you know, the squish and the base are cut exactly the same on every one, I don't really need to lay out anything particular to each saw. So I'm able to, you know, I print these spacers out. I know exactly what this distance needs to be to set my transfers at the timing number that I want. I'm able to drop this thing down in there, trace around it with a Sharpie marker, and you know, I get my layout lines exactly how I want them. So I'll go in here and I'll grind this thing and I'll set you up, and we'll see how we do that. So we're over here, you know, I've just gotta fort them like everybody else does. So we're gonna go in here and touch the transfers up and angle them the way we want them. We'll clean our exhaust port up a little bit and polish it smooth. We'll put all our chamfers on and we'll be ready to go. So again, I'm not going to talk through this a whole lot. You got to have the right tools to be able to do this right. So I'll leave that at that. Okay, so I like that. We'll go ahead and chamfer all this stuff so that we don't hang a ring. Okay, so got everything to where I want it in there. We got some nice little chamfers on there. We're gonna clean this up. I use the Scotch-Brite on a mandrel. Man, if you guys aren't using these things, it's a 3M product. You can get them on Amazon. It says standard abrasives here, but it's a 3M product. But it's a cross buff. They're actually meant for porting work. That's what they were designed for. So they make them in all the different flavors, but they work really well. So let's toss this on here and we'll get this cleaned up. So I'm able to just go in here real quick and kind of take those tooling marks out, blend the corners together. Like I said, most of the marks that you see in there when you bring it out of the machine are kind of just scuffs from the tool slightly dragging or whatever from one pass to the next. So get this. Okay, so you see how long that took me, but I mean, it's smooth inside there now. So again, this is probably good enough as it is, but you know, we even go one step farther. So I gotta change my thing out. It looks like here I had a little one in for a little saw that I did last. I'm gonna put a little bit my new and a little bit bigger one in here. So break this. Again, there's a 1,000 different, you know, shapes and stuff. I use these little cotton buffs. I wish I could find a good American company that made something like this. I've looked and I haven't had any luck, so if anybody knows something, let me know. But okay, so we put that on there. Got a block of polishing compound here. We just load that up just real light. And then I go in here and spread it out quick. You know, I've seen some guys use WD-40 and Scotch-Brite, and you know, that works too, but I've had good luck with this. So we I do the corners first and then kind of blend them. Kind of key here is don't put too much of the compound in. Okay, that's basically it. So it's a little filmy now, but we get it washed out. That thing will be like a mirror, so I'll show you. So I take this over to the sink and get it washed out really well and make sure that all the filings and stuff are cleaned out, and we'll meet you back over at the saw, and we'll put this baby back together. So actually, I'll take you back over to the machine and I'll show you how we do the muffler. So let's head over there. Okay, so we're back over here at the machine. I've got the muffler mounted in there. We're gonna run this. So basically this is a good opportunity to kind of make sure you get every penny out of your tooling. Because this can is stainless and it kind of vibrates around, and it's real hard on tooling. So I'm actually kind of using my second-hand cutters. Once they've kind of fallen out of use for finishing work and stuff like that, I'm able to use it over here, and you know, it's got a little chip in it. It's not the end of the world, because this stuff's super thin, so surface finish doesn't even really matter. So we did the port matching. That was the first cut. Matches the cylinder. Since I made that bigger, we opened that side hole up, and then now we're going to go in here and sorry it's hard to see, guys. We're going to go in here and thin that baffle out that's inside of here. So basically what I do is I try to make the walls straight at the top. So, you know, steel kind of cups all that stuff in at the top of the baffle. I don't like to take the baffle out. I think it takes a lot of the structure out of the can, and you can have issues with, you know, even breaking the bolts off inside the cylinder head, and that becomes a real expensive problem. So anyways, I just thin that out. So that's that, 2 minutes, and we'll take this out. I got to take it back over to the grinder and again just do some finishing work on it. So I'm going to do that real fast, and then I'll rinse them up and I'll meet you back at the bench, and we'll put this saw back together. Okay, so we're back here at the machine, or at the saw I mean, and we're going to put this thing back together. So got my cylinder all cleaned up and washed, you know, blown out really well. Make sure that there's no chips or nothing in there. The muffler's same way, so I got it cleaned up, and you got to really make sure that you don't have any you know, burrs or anything inside of here, because especially if you're going to run a screen, there's no way for that stuff to get out. So you got to make sure you get these cleaned up good. We've got our exhaust gasket and our heat shield from when we did the muffler, so everything's ready to go. So what I do like to do is, sorry I step off camera here for a second, but take a rag, and I do like to clean up. You know, I showed you that extra oil and stuff on here, but there's just some It's more metallic looking than I like to see it, but that was just because, you know, it was the first fire at the factory and it's kind of to be expected, but I'm going to get it out while I can. So we get this cleaned up, we're ready to put this thing back together. So again, if your saw has any significant amount of use on it, you need to get a new base gasket. You know, these things are like $5 or $7 or something, and even for steel, that's a cheap part. So put this back on a 500. It's keyed. This tab goes down on the bottom left hand side. That's the only way it's going to go. So I take the oil that, you know, we mix our fuel with. I've got it in this syringe, and I just put a little in here and spread it around with my finger. I don't necessarily think it helps you assemble this thing, but it makes sure that, you know, this thing's not dry whenever you fire it up for the first time. So you need a ring tool. So just make sure your rings are lined up with the alignment pins. I like to do it on the intake side down here on a 500. And then, you know, this thing just slips on here. So just get it lined up, and you want to have a tendency to really push, but man, you don't need to. You just barely push down on it and it'll slide right down over top of that piston. So then you can pull your tool out and get this thing down the rest of the way. You got to make sure you're kind of back, that way it goes over that little, I don't know, protrusion that's in the cylinder there. So we get our bolts, put these in. Again, I've shown at least an assembly video for this before, so it's the same way I do it. I like to cross them. I don't let it, I know I'm using an impact, I don't let it clunk more than you know, once or twice really. I'm just trying to get them snugged up with that, and then, you know, I like to do it the right way with this. So I probably do I don't know, 1/8 of a turn once it's snug. Just to get these down. Now, you know, I'm sure Steel's got a specific assembly tool that they use to torque those, but the problem is going to be when you get an extension and a tool, and it's going to be hard to get an accurate torque. So you could use a torque tool if you could figure it out, but realistically, you're not going to get an accurate one. So like I said, I do snug plus 1/8 of a turn or whatever, and it seems to be working. So I like to get this exhaust side kind of closed up first. One thing I did forget, and I always keep this on my bench, but this is a M5 by 0.8 tap. It's the pretty common size of most of these fasteners on this saw, but these two lower mounts for the exhaust, they put Loctite in them whenever they assemble the saw, and it basically makes running them back in kind of a pain, and you'll get them chowdered up and cross-threaded. And so I just run this thing in real fast on a drill. Just to clean them up. And then I'm going to actually take this over and blow this out. So I like to have the cylinder on before I do this, and then I just hold my hand over the exhaust port so that we make sure nothing gets up in the saw. Right back. Okay, so that's ready to go. Best way to do this is you can't kind of just stick these things together and stick them on there. You've got to kind of assemble it, because this thing's keyed on the bottom here. So you set that on there. You get your bolts, which again, we know that they're the kind of dirty ones. We use those whenever we did our muffler mod. And then I like to hold this thing up here, run my tool, just get them started a few threads. Okay, so then I run them down where they're, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch or something from stuck, so this thing can still move. Because you got to get these lined up too. So take your two lower bolts, and then they'll run in there really nice because I just chased those threads out. So run these in, and I just snug them up, and that way I know that this muffler is lined up enough that whenever I put the cover on and I run them in, I'm not cross-threading these things. So now I snug these up, couple clunks, double check it with this. Again, you don't want to go really reefing on those things because what they're bolting to is an expensive piece now. So okay, so that's done. We can in this case they're not getting a bark box here. This is actually going to be a hot shot saw, so okay, we'll get these run back in. Now there's lots of maybe debate on whether a guy should use Loctite on these or not. To be honest, I don't typically put Loctite on there, especially if I know a guy's going to take this apart. So I know that they already have pieces to replace this. I'm not going to go Loctiting it on and then they're fighting it, putting it off. So, or when they go to take this one off, you know, in 4 days to put their stuff on. So, it's like anything. You need to, you know, check your fasteners. You know, it's the same reason you check all that stuff on your pickup when you change the oil and grease stuff, and you know, it's just kind of part of the deal. So okay, so now the exhaust side's all done, ready to go. We can put the intake side back on. So we start with the injection module. So this thing lines up. There's kind of some little dowels built into that housing. So we need 3 of the screws. So it's kind of the top right one, the bottom left, and the bottom right. So again, these are just securing a plastic housing, so go easy on them. But those are the 3 you want to put in first. Then you need to put your harness back on for the injection module and make that electrical connection again. So these rubber grommets that are on here, they just slip down in the little notches that are in this housing. So obviously this one wants to be a booger right now, so make sure you just get them lined up right. They'll fit perfect. They'll pop down in the hole whenever you get it. So this T10, again, I just put this screw in a couple threads so I didn't lose it. But you can put this, I know you guys can't see, I'm sorry. You can put this wire back in here. And I like to kind of seat it so that it's right. And then put this screw. Again, this is one I find if guys have goofed with this, I'll be able to tell because that thing is stripped. Go easy. It's plastic. It doesn't need to be reefed. Okay, so now we're ready to put this cover back on. It's kind of the exact, obviously, opposite way that I took it off. So you got to kind of pinch this tube. So I set it over top. I kind of fold the tube with my finger and pop it right down in there, and that's it. It goes right where it needs to go, and then you kind of got to work it over that boot. You take your 4 screw, boom, that's done. Don't forget this one. That one's done. Okay, so we're buttoned back up. We need to secure our harness back up, so slides in this way, pushes down this way. If you want to push this thing down, find something that's relatively blunt. Don't go using a screwdriver and popping on that harness. Okay, so that's that's basically done. This is a good time to put your plug back in. Same kind of thing as the base gasket. I know lots of guys say, well, you know, don't reuse the spark plug. If it's been run, I'm not going to reuse it. They don't snug these things down all the way at the factory, so you've still got a little bit of that crush washer left. If it's been snugged twice, it goes in the garbage. I use a new one. I still got it, right? So it's snugged there. It's a quarter turn. You read the box, that's what it tells you. So there was still a quarter turn of crush washer on there, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab a decomp plug quick. So we make these decomp plugs. We just put our logo in them. You know, this is a 13 millimeter. I took it out with a impact, but I obviously don't want to put it in with that. So we just run this in. If a guy's got bad shoulders, you know, run the decomp. It's not the end of the world. It's just, it's a failure point that, you know, I like to eliminate. So snug that thing up. Yeah, I wish the letters lined up perfect every time, but that's not the way it works. So, okay. So this thing's ready to get the tank. So we put the tank back on. Take your pliers. I like to do impulse line first and then the fuel line. So reach down in here. It's kind of hard to see, guys. I'm sorry, but I just grab the kind of base of it gently with this. Snug that impulse line up on there. Make sure that that's, you know, lined up good. And then on the fuel side, see if I can turn this. You know, don't go pinching on this thing hard because you'll rip these lines up. But if you're real gentle, you can snug them up. I do the, what's the return line, the lower one first, and then the supply line on the top. Okay. Now what a guy needs to do is take this screw back out. That'll pop right back down in there. Run his screw back in. Okay. You'll see that separates back out when it's good. And then you've got to pull this boot through. Again, you can use needle nose, but just be gentle, okay? So that's back through there like it's supposed to be. Don't forget this piece. Okay, so I put that in there while I'm thinking about it. We need to route this wire back. We can, just to get out of our way, let's put this spark plug back on. Make sure you get that thing pushed. Honest to God, half the saws I take out of a box, this thing isn't even on all the way. So run this wire back the way that it wants to go. It's kind of already bent. Again, I like to use this T27 just because it's kind of blunt on the bottom and it's not going to tear up this harness. So go gentle. You can, you know, use it to help you push that back in. Make sure you get it snugged. Goes into this farthest clip. And again, I got to reiterate this. Black to black, blue to blue. Do not swap those around. This harness comes up. They've got a little piece of heat shrink. It clips into there. Goes down into that one. Okay, so that's all buttoned back up. These two other pieces. So this is the quarter turn thing. I'm just going to slip this back on here. This throttle body, put it on there. Make sure that you capture that little ring. This thing sets down on here nice. This is the two aluminum bolts. You know, I talk to guys all the time about the 500, and so, you know, lightweight was the focus when they designed this saw, enough that they thought those two bolts should be aluminum. So, you know, that's kind of tells you how they go about this saw. There are some places I wish there was some more meat, and you kind of think, why did they do that? But, you know, that's what that was the name of the game with this saw, was power to weight ratio, and that's, you know, why it's as good as it is. So, put the handle back on. I kind of slip it around the bottom and then get this halfway lined up, flip it back over. You know, before we put that tank on, would have been a really good time to put a suspension kit on if you were going to do that. Put these 2 screws in, run them down, go gentle. Again, these things are going into plastic, so you can't just hammer on them, but basically you need to watch the head, and once it quits spinning, you know, only maybe 1 or 2 more clicks. Okay, so the only other one left is the top one. You can get it started with this, but boy, you got to make sure that it's not cross-threaded, because again, you're screwing into what's now essentially a $700 cylinder, so don't goof that up. Okay, so that's basically done. We're going to put these covers back on. That one slips down in there. Quarter turn that one. And then air filter. You should run a West Coast saw one there because this one's kind of junky. But that's it, man. That's a done saw. So, you know, start to finish, you know, it's a relatively quick process, especially if you get, you know, kind of lined up and you get moving on them. So I put some gas in these things. I let them run outside and basically warm them up enough that you know, make them run, make sure that they're doing what they want. I go out there and blip them around. You're gonna see, you know, typically they're gonna run rich whenever they're sitting running like that. So, you know, if you were to take that muffler cover off, this is just, sorry, this is one of our bar block plates. If you buy a saw from us, it comes in here. It's really good for helping line up. If you were to change these dogs up, it's the same thickness as a bar. It lets you, you know, put this chain roller on here. It does block the hole that the oil comes out. So when you're storing your saw, it helps to prevent oil from going everywhere. But realistically, it's not like a rubber seal or anything. So, you know, the pressure that builds in there is going to win one way or the other, and some oil is probably going to spill out, but it's not going to be a total mess. So, anyways, we just send one of those with a saw. It's a kind of a little gift from us. But snug this up. Like to snug these down, that way when it runs it doesn't fall off. So anyways, like I said, we run the saws for a while. Make sure that they're going to be good. If it was a M-tronic saw, we would run the reset procedure on it. On a 500, you don't have to do that. So anyways, box it up, ship it out. But again, like I said, we're typically like a week. So all right, well, I'm gonna close this out. If you got any questions, feel free to reach out to us. 309-868-1444 gets you to the shop here. You can send me an email, mike@309machine.com. Well, sorry this was such a long video, but thanks for watching it, and I hope you guys got some answers and are interested in what we're doing here. So have a good day.